Hey everybody, happy weekend, happy Friday. Thanks for joining us all again this weekend for another Friday night stitch-in. If you're watching this on a Tuesday, happy Tuesday. As you can see, I'm working on my Northern Expressions Needleworks piece again. This is Shades of Wine. And I am stitching this on 40 count white linen, and I'm using dinky dyes, a combination of dinky dyes and gentle arts. The dark thread that I'm using right now is the gentle arts, and the medium and the light are dinky dyes. I've made some great progress with this piece, which makes me very, very happy. It's funny how much you can accomplish when you don't sort of rabbit around in between your projects. So this is the second full week that I have spent being consistent working on this large project. I did have my new start of my alphabet, my Prairie Schooler alphabet, and as of yet, I have not put a single stitch in that since my update on Monday's video, but I'm hoping to put in some time onto that tomorrow. This is the last night that I'm going to work on this piece for a little while. I've decided that this will be my piece for the stitch-in tonight, and then I'm going to put it away for a little while. And I'm going to choose another of my large works in progress to work on for the next 2 weeks. I've never been one for much of a rotation, though I really admire other people who do and who can stick to that. I've always been much more of a sort of stitch what I feel like when I feel like, but I do love that I have, made quite a bit of progress on this, and it's visible. And I think there's something to be said about that. So for now, I'm going to just try to spend, 2 weeks per project and try to cycle through my larger works in progress and see if I can make a dent in them this year. Oops. So I was tagged, myself and any other FlossTuber who wishes to answer some questions that were posed by the Crafty Curator on our Facebook group this morning. Actually, I think she posted them last night. Letitia, the Crafty Curator, has created a document that can be found on the Facebook group Friday Off the Grid, and it's up there for anyone to answer, either Stitch With Me or regular FlossTube videos. And I think she's come up with some great questions. So I had a quick glance through the questions, but I didn't really, spend too much time thinking about my answers, because sometimes it's fun to see what sort of rolls off the top of your head when you're reading the questions and answering them. And we're just chatting. So let's see if I can answer question 1. Sorry, I find this really I love stitching this so much. The small count fabric, the bright color, the fact that there are only 3 colors in this piece, and the design is so intricate. I love it. I find myself getting distracted by the sheer prettiness of it. So I'm sad to be putting this one away tonight, but I do think that I will be equally as pleased with progress made on some of my other works in progress. There isn't a single piece that's in my stash that I am working on or have, in my stash pile that I don't love. So I'm spoiled for choice. I'm not exactly sure what the next one I'm going to work on, but I think I'm leaning towards Glendon Place Tiramisu because the stitching on that is almost half done. I think I might pull that out tomorrow, as well as working on the Prairie Schooler alphabet. We'll see. We'll see which way the winds blow. All right, so Letitia's first question is, if you could wish for a person in history to be represented in a mirabilia pattern, who would it be? Wow, that's a good question. If I could wish for a person to be represented in a mirabilia pattern, well, since I've never seen mirabilia patterns that have men in them, I'm going to assume that I'm going to choose a woman. So I've narrowed it down, 50-50, right? So I'm choosing a woman, and as a musician, one of the females in musical history that has always caught my attention, and I was always fascinated to learn more about her when she would come up in my university classes, was Clara Schumann. Now, Clara Schumann was the wife of Robert Schumann, who was a famous composer and pianist. But Clara Schumann was also a famous pianist and composer in her own right, and was one of the very, very, very few female composers of that sort of, pre-20th century time period that remains sort of in our canon of today. Because, obviously at that time and before, classical, I use the term classical loosely because where there are distinct time periods that are divided up into musical history, ways of talking about musical history, and using the term classical is sort of a bit of a mislabel, because the classical time period was really only a few hundred years, if that. We had the Baroque time period, we had the Romantic time period, we had, medieval music, and of course I'm going out of order here, but anyways, I digress. Clara Schumann was one of the few female composers who was well known for at the time for her work and her piano performance. She and her husband Robert were also were big supporters of the composer Brahms, Johannes Brahms, and it is said, and I'm gossiping here, that Brahms was in love with Clara Schumann. Now, whether or not that's true, is it known? Is it fact? Well, I wasn't alive when Clara Schumann and Robert and Johannes Brahms were alive, so hard for me to say, but I suspect there's some truth to it. And I think there's probably some research to back that up. Anyways, so I guess that's my way to answer that question. If I wanted to see a person in a historical figure made into a mirabilia pattern, wouldn't it be nice to have, because you can picture those beautiful gowns that mirabilia does so well, a woman seated at a piano, a beautiful, piano. So a sort of century piece with Clara Schumann playing the piano. So there you go. That's my answer for that. And I think I need to find out where I'm going here. Just give me a second here on the other side. That. Okay. I think I'm on the right track now. Now that I've finished. Look, I finished my triangle. My butterfly is complete. And now I can start going down this other side. All right, question number 2. Question number 2. What landmark or area of the world would you have loved to see captured in a chatelaine? Well, I'm not all that familiar with chatelaine patterns. Before I sort of became really involved in FlossTube and watching other FlossTubers, they weren't patterns that I was drawn to for stitching myself. I mean, I thought that they were beautiful, and I had seen a couple of stitched pieces. I know Stitchy Mom is working on Venice. I believe it's Venice. But I have never kitted one up myself. I've never, stitched one myself. So I don't know what's out there. So I may say something, a landmark or an area of the world, and there may already be a chatelaine design that has already been done. So I don't know really how to answer that. I'm not familiar enough with the pieces, but I guess my favorite landmarks, of course, I'm Canadian. I grew up very, very close to Niagara Falls, the Canadian side of the falls, obviously. We lived about 45 minutes away, not even, maybe half an hour away. It was a very popular place for us to take friends and relatives when they would come to visit. It's a stunning, spectacular wonder of the world. So I guess if I had to pick a landmark, that's sort of the majesty and the beauty of the falls. I don't know. How would you translate that? If anyone could have done it, I'm sure Martina would have been the one. The designs that I have seen are incredible. But as of yet, it's been a rabbit hole that I have not gone down. Now, keep in mind that I did say as of yet. I'm never adverse to having my elbow twisted. All right, now I am going to end this thread before I lose it. Oh, I just lost it too. Shoot. Okay. Oh, it's going to be fiddly. There we go. And that quick little tuck. There, nice and tidy. So I was stitching in bed yesterday, as you do. And I had this on my lap frame, and I was, you can see you can't see. I have 2 magnets here, and I had 2 magnets on the back side. I had one on each. And when I was done stitching, I only had 1 needle instead of 2. Sorry, did I say that correct? I had 2 needles on the back of my fabric, 1 on each magnet. I don't know why. Probably because I was stitching, I had 1 strand of dark and 1 strand of light that I was sort of fiddling with at the same time. But long story, I had 2 needles back here. And when I was done stitching, I only had 1 needle back there. I thought, oh dear, there's a needle somewhere in my bed. So, anywho, when I got up to look for it, I heard the telltale tink of a needle hitting the ground. And so fortunately, I knew it wasn't in the bed. And I was able to get down on my hands and knees and find it. So all's well that ends well. There was not a needle that ended up in my bed. So thank heavens. But lesson learned, no more than one needle at a time, and always know where your needle is when you're stitching in bed. So that was so funny. People thought it was so funny that I admitted that I was in my bed when I recorded that Sunday high tea episode. I mean, where else would you have Sunday high tea? But, breakfast in bed, right? And Olivia B., who we all know and love, said that I could really increase my viewership if I called it something like Sunday in Bed with Caroline or something like that. Oh, I thought that was pretty funny. Anyway, moving along to question number 3. What are the top 3 places you want to visit that you've never been to? Other than New Jersey in May, of course. Of course. So what are the top 3 places you want to visit that you've never been to? Oh my goodness. Can I only pick 3? Oh boy. Okay. Well, number 1 would have to be rural France. I would love to see French countryside. And it just so happens that I happen to have a very French friend, Ada, who happens to live in France. And so I think that one day I'm going to have to pack my bags and show up on Ada's doorstep and invite myself in for a glass of wine. I think that would be spectacular. The French countryside. So that's definitely on my list of places that one day I'd really love to see. Number 2, Australia. One day. And I know my husband's on board because he wants to go to the Australian Open and see the tennis. He is an enormous tennis fan. I also have been to the US Open. I'm not as much of a fan as he is. I know all the players only because he watches so much. He would love to go to the Australian Open, and I would love to go to Australia. And sidebar here, if you haven't seen it yet and you're on the Facebook group, go and look up the video that Marie posted. Remember she posted the koala video a few weeks ago? Well, a few days ago, she posted a kangaroo video. And not just any kangaroo, but an orphaned baby kangaroo taking a few of his first little hops. And I tell you guys, I think I've watched that video 15 times now. And not only have I watched that video 15 times, but I liked and subscribed to this guy's Facebook page because he's incredible. The work that he's doing is incredible. The kangaroos are amazing. The name of the little baby kangaroo is Bradley, and it will melt your heart. It is just the sweetest thing. Anyways, so a big thank you to Marie for posting that. I really, one day, I would just love to go to Australia. One of our favorite television shows, and I know this is another sidebar, isn't it? We watch MasterChef Australia. That is, bar none, hands down, our favorite television show is MasterChef Australia. We look forward to it every single year. And then we save up all of the episodes and then we binge watch it in the summer at the cottage. And that is our family television viewing when we're at the cottage because we can watch it on the computer. Now, John brings it up on a stick. We don't download anything at the cottage because, well, we can't. But I don't know. He works his magic. We watch it at the cottage. And oh, it is so good. So good. It's just, the people are funny, they're kind, the cooking is amazing, and the accents, the Australian accent it's like, for me, and Scottish accents. I love accents. And I could just listen to them talk all day. And I love looking, at the scenery that they share when the contestants go on special trips. across the country, and I've met a few friends online from Australia, and we have friends from London here. John's business partner and his wife traveled to Australia. They spent 5 weeks there last year, and they just had the most amazing time. And one day I will get there, and I will stay for a nice long visit. So that's number 2. So rural France, Australia. Picking a third is hard. Narrowing it down to a third, that's hard. There's 2. I can't narrow it down to 3. So I'm gonna give 4, and I think Letitia will be okay with that. So number 3 and 4 are tied. I'd like to go to Iceland. I would love to go to Iceland one day because the scenery, right? The scenery. I mean, the pictures that you see. There's a reason why tourism is their number one. It's stunning. So one day, Iceland is on my list. And tied for third place would be Namibia. Namibia in Africa. It is the country just up from South Africa. I'm describing this terribly, aren't I? Folks, look at a map. You'll see what I mean. My husband's father was born in Namibia, and born and raised in Namibia, and the family farm is still there. My father-in-law's brother still lives on the farm, and he's elderly now, and the farm is being bought by another family, I believe. Obviously, I don't know the ins and outs of what is going on, but I do know that eventually one day that farm will no longer be in my husband's family, and I would like to one day go and visit and see. It's a spectacular country. I'd like to see the dunes. And John's cousins still live in the capital city as well. They live in Windhoek. And I would like to visit them in their home. They come to Canada quite often. John's cousin, well, their daughter, so his cousin's daughter goes to school in Quebec, in Canada, here in Quebec, at McGill University. And so they come to Canada fairly regularly. His cousin, the wife, is half Canadian. Her mother was French Canadian. So they have ties to this country, and they love it here as well as their home country in Namibia. So they come here frequently, so we know them very, very well. And one day I would like to visit them in their home. But the other thing you should know about me, when I talk about visiting all of these places one day, the one thing that I'm not sure I've ever mentioned before is I am not a good flyer. I'm really not an airplane person. In fact, I quite loathe it. So if we go somewhere in the States, we tend to drive because it's less angst for me to be in the car for a fair bit longer than in an airplane. But I can't drive to Namibia. I can't drive to Iceland. I can't drive to Australia, and I certainly can't drive to France. So these places are going to require me to get on an airplane. One day. We'll see. Let's see, what am I doing here? Okay. There you go. All right, question number 4. What is it that you love most about stitching? What would you miss most about stitching if you could no longer do it? These may or may not have the same answer. What is it that you love most about stitching? Oh boy, that's a hard one. I think the question is, what don't I love about stitching? And I guess the only thing I don't love about stitching is when the frog comes to visit and you have to rip out your work. Everything else about stitching I absolutely love. Everything. There isn't a single thing about it that I don't love. From the choosing of the project to having quiet time to myself to sit and stitch to the finished project, I love it all. And if I couldn't stitch, that would be pretty devastating. And you know, it's always kind of at the back of my mind. I have very poor eyesight. It's crossed my mind that at some point in the future, I may not be able to see well enough, even with magnification and good lighting. Maybe one day my eyesight will one day fail me and I won't be able to stitch anymore. And that's a hard thought. I do knit. I would probably still be able to knit by feel, but losing my stitching would be a loss for sure. And I would miss it all. There isn't a single thing about it that I wouldn't miss, except for the frog. Okay, number 5. What is the last movie that made you cry? Oh, that's easy. That was Elf. The last movie that made me cry, that would have been Elf. Yep, I always cry at the end of Elf. Every single time. Every single time that Zoe, how do you pronounce her? Deschanel? I can't pronounce her last name, and I should have practiced it before I didn't actually. That question I don't remember reading. But anyways, her name is, Zoe, the lead female character in the movie Elf. At the very end of the movie, when she starts singing, you better watch out, you better not cry, I start to cry every single time. It's the silliest thing ever. But it fills me with so much Christmas spirit. I love it. So yeah, that was the last movie that made me cry. And question number 6. Tell me a joke. Oh, I've got a good one. I just saw it. Okay, so what did the thesaurus have for breakfast? A synonym roll. Isn't that terrible? Oh, I love it. I love terrible jokes. My friend Jilana posted that one on Facebook a couple of days ago, and I laughed so hard. And then I told John and Sarah that joke, and they just rolled their eyes at me. They thought it was the dumbest thing they'd ever heard. And I was still laughing like 2 or 3 minutes later because there was a little picture of a little mouse eating a cinnamon roll. No, I can't even say it. And underneath him, it said a synonym roll. And it was stupid. But yeah, what can I say? I love stupid jokes like that. All right. Let's see. Question number 7. If you could be any animal or insect, what would you be and why? If I could be any animal or insect. Well, I guess I'd probably choose to be a pampered house pet. Like, a golden retriever or a domesticated cat. But I would definitely want to be in a home where they appreciated my various attributes. So there you go. I'd be a house pet, a pampered house pet. Dog or cat, wouldn't matter. What am I doing? Am I lined up here yet? I think I am. I think I'm gonna stop this one. This one's hard to count without physically counting, and I want to just keep talking. So I think I'm going to end that thread, and I'm going to go over, well, there. Okay. Question 8. Say something that you love about 2 random FlossTubers and why we should watch them. Don't name the person that sent you this tag. Oh, okay. Say something that you love about 2 random FlossTubers. Okay. Well, let's start with, because he was one of the last ones that I was watching, I'm going to talk about Ginger Gerald. Ginger Gerald. I love watching Gerald. I love his projects because they are completely different from projects that I would stitch on. And so I really enjoy getting a different perspective and a different style of stitching, because I don't know, I feel like it adds to my repertoire that, I had never, now here's a confession, a true confession for you. I had never heard of Taya Guvner, and I'm pretty sure I said that right. Taya Guvner? I think I'm close. I had never heard of her designs until Ginger Gerald and Letitia were showing theirs, and the London design that Gerald is working on. That was the first time I'd ever seen that, and it's stunning. And then I started looking at the other Thea Governor. Everybody says Thea Governor, so let's say Thea Governor. The other designs that were available, and yeah, wow, amazing. Just amazing. So, and I wouldn't have been exposed to that. And the other thing that I like about Gerald is that, and I'm going to classify a whole bunch of FlossTubers in here that do the same thing that I love, like Elena and Olivia B, who they're not afraid to poke fun at themselves. They're not afraid to, be silly in public and maybe, do something a little embarrassing, to not take life too seriously. And I think that's what I really enjoy most about Gerald. He did a few videos at Christmas time where he put on a gnome hat in front of us. And that, I know that seems really silly, and it seems like something, that you wouldn't really necessarily think of why you like someone. But let me tell you a little story. Back when I was a teenager, I was applying for a job as a woodwind apprentice with a symphony, a local symphony that put on a summer music camp for children, which actually ended up being where I met my husband. So yeah, I got the job. But when I went for the interview, at the time I thought, okay, well, I need to stand out. I need to stand out from all the other people, all the other kids who are applying for this job. And what can I do that will make me stand out? And I knew that the job description was, you needed to be good with kids. You needed to be able to have fun with kids. And I thought, okay, well, I need to show that I can be funny and that I can be silly and play with kids. So I borrowed the biggest Mexican sombrero that you've ever seen. I think it was out of the drama department at my high school. And a didgeridoo. a didgeridoo from my music department. So combined with a didgeridoo and an enormous Mexican sombrero, I showed up at the job interview, no word of a lie, wearing the sombrero, and I attempted to play the didgeridoo. And then I pulled out my flute and I did a proper audition because, of course, part of the job was also that you were there to help coach, the kids who were learning instruments. And so you were there to help. You were the woodwind apprentice. You were there to help the woodwind teacher coach the children. And so I did actually have to prove that I could play my instrument. So after I made a fool out of myself with the didgeridoo, I then, played the flute. But I left an impression. I made them laugh, and I didn't take myself too seriously, and I got the job. And I think that is really what to me is so appealing about Gerald. He looks very serious, and he looks like he approaches life with steadfastness. But then there's that part of him that's willing to wear a gnome hat on YouTube. I mean, come on, right? That's awesome. Just as awesome as Olivia and Elena walking through a mall wearing elf costumes. It doesn't get any better than that. I love it. And that makes me laugh. So I like to laugh. So let's see. Let's pick another random FlossTuber. How about a new one to me that I just started watching? Stitchin' Mommy. She is definitely not new. She's got lots of videos out. But I've only just recently started watching her, and I've watched, the last video I watched was a Stitch With Me video that she did where she was, I'm pretty sure this was her most recent video, pretty sure. She was working on, Ada, and she was beading and talking about how to do fractional stitches on Ada. And I found her voice very clear. I found her information was, helpful. I think she would make a very good teacher. She was calm and clear with concise directions about exactly how she was handling various aspects of the technique that she was doing. I found her really enjoyable to listen to. So, Stitchin' Mommy. I think it's Stitchin_Mommy on YouTube. Anyways, if you like me hadn't seen her before, check her out. I think you'll enjoy her as well. So there you go. There's 2 random FlossTubers, and I could go on and on and on and on and on because let's face it, there are just way too many awesome FlossTubers to mention. I love stitching this so much, you guys. How am I going to put this away? I think I'm going to have to be quick about it and get out my next whip super quick. Otherwise, I'm going to just keep working on this. But you know what? That's okay too. We're going to have to wait and see, I think, what's going to happen with this, because I am just having way too much fun seeing the progress happening in this piece. I love it. I just love it. Okay, let's see. What number am I up to here? Number 9. If you found that you were suddenly unable to stitch, what would you do with your stash? Oh dear. Does anyone in your family know what to do with it if you couldn't advise them? Oh, I actually live in fear of this day. And let me tell you, if something happens to me and my husband has to deal with my stash, I better be dead. I am joking. I am joking, but I don't think he has any, he knows it's not a secret. I don't buy stuff in secret and not tell him about it. He has absolutely no problem with me spending money on, he realizes full well this is a passion. but I don't think he has any idea the extent of the stash. And I think that should the day come, if anything were to happen to me and he actually had to sort it out, yeah, I think that would be a little overwhelming. I think he'd probably just, he would probably call Kathy at Thread and I and say, yeah, who wants it? Come and get it. My daughter has, at the moment, my daughter has no interest in it. But my sister-in-law, Kathy, and my niece, Clara, they are both crafters. And so, you know, they would know what to do with it. They'd put it to good use. Let's put it that way. So, what would I do with my stash? So if I was unable to stitch, I would give my stash to my sister-in-law. And I would give, well, you know what? I have a lot of stitching friends and knitting friends too. Adrian and Louise would want dibs on some of my yarn, I think. And my friend Tracy would probably want some of my stitching stuff too. So I don't know. I'd have to, maybe I need to draw up a will just for my stash and start dividing it up now. It's a bit morbid, isn't it? But kind of funny. All right. Oh, I love this so much. Look at that. Okay. Number 10. What was your stitching like before social media became inundated with cross-stitching? Did you stitch less? Did you stitch more? Did you even have such a thing as a rotation? Well, what was my stitching like before social media? It was exactly the same. I'll be honest. My stitching has not changed one bit since I joined Instagram. I was always a serial starter. Because I'm very good friends with the owner of my local needlework shop, I spent a lot of time there. So obviously they brought in new designers and introduced me to new patterns and new designers and other beautiful things. I have always spent my disposable income at my LNS. That's where I choose to spend my money. I get my hair done 3 times a year. Seriously, no word of a lie. It's curly. It hides everything. So I never go to the hairdresser except for 3 times a year when it really gets, I look in the mirror and I'm like, okay, you can't put it off any longer. You better go. I never go to, I don't go to spas. I don't get manicures or pedicures. I do all that myself. I don't spend money on those kinds of things. I hate going clothes shopping. All of my disposable income goes to my crafting. All of it. So my stitching now is exactly the same as it always has been. And that's why my stash is the size that it is. Did you stitch less? No. Do you stitch more? My stitching, I seem to go in phases. I really was heavily into knitting for a few years, and I still am, but knitting kind of took over my stitching for a while, and I really missed it. And so that was a big reason why I started doing FlossTube, was to help me, sort of rediscover the things in my stash and my love of stitching. So that has definitely reignited my stitchy bug, but I never stopped stitching. So 5. Just make sure I'm on the right track here. I think so. I think I answered the full question. Did you even have such a thing as a rotation? No. I've always been stitch what I want when I want. And I know that Stitch M has, another fabulous FlossTuber. She's wonderful. Stitch M, again, could listen to her talk all day long. She stitch what you want when you want. She's got a funny acronym for that, and I can't remember how to say it, but it's funny. But that's what I'm like. Stitch what I want when I want. And I've always been like that. So actually working on this one large whip for 2 weeks has been a little out of the norm for me. But I'm liking it. Liking it so far. Okay, question 11. Do you find that cross-stitching on social media has helped you stay focused or caused you to become distracted? If it has helped you to stay focused, how do you manage to stay active on social media and still be productive in your stitching? If it has distracted you from your stitching, what have you done to get back on track with your stitching but still remain active in the community? Yeah, that's a good question. Do you find, so let's just stick with the first part of the question. Do you find that cross-stitching on social media has helped you stay focused or caused you to become distracted? Okay, well, here's the thing. When you start a Facebook group for a worldwide community of stitchers and people actually show up and join the party, it takes a lot of time. And I love it. The Facebook group, the Instagram community, it's so much fun. Does it distract from my stitching? You bet. Friday night stitching, I spend a lot of time on Facebook. And I have to try and dial it down a little bit so that I get more of my own stitching done. But it is so much fun over there, I'm telling you. Everybody posting their progress pictures. It's so fun. So anyways, does it help you to stay focused? No, it does not help me to stay focused. It definitely is distracting. It's definitely distracting. So I think I have to start setting a few more personal rules. Not rules per se. Gosh, every time I make a rule for myself, I am hell-bent on breaking it. So no rules. Just I need to check in less and be satisfied with that. Maybe satisfied with that I can't, I might miss some posts because, you know, I really try hard to see everybody's post and, you know, like everything. You know, I love putting hearts on anyone who shares pictures of their stitching because it's fun. And, you know, you love what I love. So it's one big, you know, love fest. And I really enjoy it, but I need to be okay. I need to make myself okay with the fact that I might miss some posts and hope that, you know, you guys understand that with so many active members on the group, it gets a little unwieldy. And we have other, we might have to add a few more moderators to the group as it gets bigger. I don't know. Right now at the moment we have, there's 4 of us who are on the page, on the group page. So I think everybody does a great job so far at keeping it kind, which is just so nice. You know, I don't know about you, but I avoid internet comment pages like the plague because they are just some of the rudest places on the internet, and people are just so absolutely horribly unkind. And I have not found that to be the case at all with this group of people. And it's very encouraging that maybe, in fact, the internet is not such a bad place to be all the time. Anyways, in a nutshell, I need to be on there less. But it's just too fun. That's the problem. Okay, question 12. I have a t-shirt that says, cross-stitching saved my life once. Tell us about a time when cross-stitching saved your life or someone else's. Well, I can't say that cross-stitching ever saved my life. I think for me that would be, did it save my life? No. It has never saved my life. Has it made my life better? 100%. Has it been a distraction during times of difficult times in my life? Absolutely. When my mother-in-law passed away in 2015, my children and I were on the island for the few days where she was in hospital. She had a massive stroke, and it took 3 to 4 days before she passed away. And my husband and my father-in-law and his sister and his nephew stayed with her. And due to where they were not anywhere close to where I was with the children. We were separated from them during this time. And being on an island by yourself with your 2 kids who are grieving, who are very upset and don't understand what's going on, that's tough. And I knit a lot during those 4 days. So I know this isn't cross-stitching, but I think craft in general is there for you when you need it to distract you, when you need it to soothe you. It's pretty perfect, and how many times I've had a friend in my everyday life who isn't a crafter, and then we all get it, right? The number one comment: I don't know how you have the patience to do that. I don't know how you can how do you have the time? How do you have the patience to do that? And I can tell you, and I absolutely know for a fact that everyone listening to this feels exactly the same way, that doing this, the act of sitting quietly and stitching, knitting, creating it, you make time for it. You make the time for it, even if it's 10 minutes, because it calms my brain down. It soothes me, and it just makes me feel more centered and happy. And so, yeah. Whether or not that saved my life, I don't think I would go that far. But it was certainly there for me when I needed distraction and soothing. And I think that's pretty important. Okay. Number 13. If you were to look at your stash and the types of patterns that you have collected, what would your cross stitch say about you? Are you dark and dramatic? Are you warm, cuddly, and cute? Are you whimsical and magical? Are you primitive with a love for the old-fashioned patterns from the days of old? Are you colorful and adventurous and not easily defined? I am definitely in the last category. Colorful and adventurous and not easily defined. That's me, because I love geometrics. I absolutely am so drawn to these types of patterns that are, geometric in style and design. But I'm also really drawn to samplers. I love samplers. I love primitive. I love Little House Needleworks. I love stitching little houses. So, those are pretty different styles. And I think my stash reflects that. I love all different kinds of work and pieces. So hard to define. That would be me. Okay. Last question. Name something that was the telltale sign that you were addicted to cross-stitch without hope of redemption. What was your aha moment? Oh, I know the answer to this one. Bang, right away. Okay, so a few years ago, when I first started Instagramming my cross-stitch on my personal feed, at the end of the year, I sort of took stock of the photographs that I had posted of my finishes. And there weren't very many. but there were a lot of starts. And, looking back on my year and thinking, oh, I started a lot of stuff, but didn't finish a lot of stuff. And then I remember thinking, oh, you didn't finish a lot of stuff, but boy, you started a lot of stuff. You really should try and, curtail, because then I started thinking about the size of my stash and the things that I already have started and everything that I still need to do. And, said to myself, you need to scale it back, girl, because your stash is, obscene. And it was the very next week that I ordered Death by Cross Stitch. So yeah, that was the moment when I was like, you're done. You're just embrace it. Just embrace it. It's your hobby. It's your passion. It's all good. I'm just going to move this up a little bit. There. That. So I guess that was my aha moment when I knew that I am completely 100% addicted to cross stitch with zero hope of redemption. So there you have it. Those were all of Letitia's questions. And Letitia, the Crafty Curator, who is another FlossTuber that I love watching her show. I find her she's just so easy to visit with. She's so easy to visit with her videos. You just feel like you're sitting next door. I think I'm going to have to figure this out. Anyways, I'm going to sign off for today because it is, what time is it now? Let's see. My watch isn't working. Oh, there it is. 3:55. 3:55 on Friday, and I need to get this up and loaded so that I can put on my party pants and be ready to stitch with everybody else at 6 o'clock my time. For those of you who have already partied and are continuing to party all weekend, let's have a fantastic time. Share those whips. Let's see what you're stitching, because I love seeing your project just as much as I love stitching on my own. I just have one little quick bit of plug here for my small business, Evertote. Please forgive the little bit of advertising here on my Friday video. I have a little Valentine bag in the shop. It's a medium cross stitch set with a coordinating notions tote. I've made 10 sets to put up in the shop. I've already sold a couple. I wanted to tell you about them today instead of Monday because I'm hoping to be shipping these out Monday morning so that people can have them in time for Valentine's Day. They're not an overtly Valentine-y bag. They're not covered in hearts. They are red and white with a red twill, and I think that they're awfully pretty. And the notions tote is polka dots, and I love polka dots. So I'm gonna just put a little picture here at the very end of my video. So if you're not interested, you're done, and we're done, and I will see you on Monday for the regular FlossTube update. If you're starting a new start this weekend, then you can celebrate it with high tea on Sunday. I won't be posting a high tea video. That's only a little special video I'm going to do once a month at the end of each month because I've already had my high tea for January. So now I have to wait till the end of February to have another one. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and I hope you get lots of stitching time and spoil yourself with just time spent for you. Happy stitching. See you Monday.